Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be right here, right now, in this space with you as your guide on this side, as your brother, as your. I'm here as you. And thank you for being here. My name is Oliver Blue, and I am here to guide us through this next workbook lesson from A Course in Miracles. Today we will be reviewing lesson 115, which is a review. We're in our third review session, and we're going to be reviewing workbook lessons 99 and workbook lesson 100. I hope you are finding that these review lessons are very helpful. I hope you are finding that the practices during the day serve as great reminders of the truth of who you are, that they serve as great reminders as to these ideas being true about us, and that they further help the process of us transforming our old way of thinking into a way of thinking that is in complete alignment with the truth of who we are. And so today's exercise is focused on the theme of salvation. And when we hear the word salvation, from a point of view of what we have experienced, it conjures up ideas about a future. But true salvation has nothing to do with the future. True salvation has to do with that which is only present. Because there's only the present moment. There is no past, there is no future. Future and past are ideas that are not in alignment with reality. There's always the present. There's the past and future are ideas that cannot be experienced in the now. So they're not real. Only the now, only this now moment. Now faith is, as the scripture says, only the now moment is reality. You can't do anything about the past or the future. But what you can do in this present moment is experience all that is in this present moment, and that is all that there is. And so when we talk about the theme of salvation today, as we review workbook lesson 99 and 100, we're talking about a salvation from the point of view of God, and not a point of view, and from a point of view that this salvation, it only is helpful in time and space. In reality, there is no need for salvation. Salvation indicates that something has gone wrong. But in reality, we know from what we've learned through these previous 114 lessons that nothing has gone wrong. It just seemed that something has gone wrong, and we have bought into the idea that something has gone wrong, and therefore, in our mind, something has gone wrong. It's like when you're in a sleeping dream. In the sleeping dream, it seems and it appears that's what's happening in the dream is real or reality. But we know in reality that is not true. Nothing is happening. It's just a dream, or it is an idea. It's a made up idea. And it's not real. But it's appeared to the dreamer as being real. But in reality, it's not real. And when we wake up from the dream, we realize that it's only a dream. It's not real. It's only an illusion. It's only a fantasy. It's only a vain imagining. It's only a mind that appeared to be separate from its source has created another existence, another self, and has created a world, and has created what experiences in another world, and all that is really dream-like figures and dream-like scenarios. They're not real, and that's what we call this life. From birth to death, we call it what? Real. But in reality, it's not real. It's only a temporary experience, playing on the playing out on the forefront of our consciousness or our awareness. And so it becomes experience, but it doesn't change the backdrop. It doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change who you are. None of your experiences, none of your activities can ever touch your reality. They can only reflect your reality or reflect a dream of something else. But the content of your experience, the content of your events and activities, even your sensations, even your perceptions, never ever changes who you are. You remain as God created you. But you can have experience to express either that which God has created, or you can play and dabble in dreams and fantasies as a separated self, as a suffering separated self, as a sick separated self, as a lacking separated self, as a fearful separated self. You can choose to play that game or play that role. It's your choice. And as we do that, we come to an understanding that we're doing that to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves. In reality, there is no suffering. There is no sickness. There is no disease. There's no pain. There's no hunger. There's no war. There's no fighting. There is none. It's only a dream of those things. And so I know this sounds really, really out there, and it really is out there. And it's out there for the purpose of bringing this fantasy, these illusions, to the truth, so they can be dissolved into the nothingness that they are. And so you can be about your happy, joyous, fulfilled, content self. So lesson 99 starts out by saying, salvation is my only function. And before we get into the two lessons, which are both on salvation, let's go back and remind ourselves of what the Course says about what salvation is. What is salvation according to the Course in Miracles? According to Jesus's Course? Okay, according to reality, what is it saying? It says salvation is a promise. Salvation is a promise made by God. It's merely a promise. What has God promised? That you and I and every other creature or created thing would find our way back to our source at last. We will find our way back to our Creator. We will find our way back to reality. So that conjures up the fact that we have lost our way. And the Course said, yes, there was a seemingly tiny mad idea of separation that entered into perfect oneness. How can a tiny mad idea enter into perfect oneness? It's impossible. But that's what it says. It says that a tiny mad idea entered into perfect oneness. And that's impossible. It is absolutely impossible. It's like taking wet out of water. It's impossible. It's like taking the burning out of the fire. It's impossible. You get one, you get the other. They're all the same. One seems like a cause, the other seems like an effect, but they're all the same. So where there is perfect oneness, where there's always perfect oneness, which is unchangeable, how can it be ever changed? That is the what? That is the billion-dollar question. How could God who was perfect oneness, break into what, billions and billions of pieces? How did Humpty Dumpty fall off the wall and become this multitude of pieces? Is it possible? So salvation is a promise that was made by God, made by the source. So the source of the promise made the promise. So salvation is a promise made by God that you and I, in every created thing that God created, will find its way at last. And this finding of the way is not like that we went off on a far journey or far distance. We just merely fell asleep and dreamed of separation. So we hadn't gone anywhere. We remain in the heart of God. We remain, God's creation remains with him as one. God's creation can never separate from him. God can never be separate. God can never be divided. God can never be broken into pieces. Love can never be broken apart. True love, because true love is unchangeable. It's impregnable. And so God promised. God said, look at here, look at here, look at here. I know you. I know what it seemed like. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I even came down and had the experience myself. He said, but in all its seeming feeling, all its seeming reality, it is not the truth. I showed it to you. I proved it to you in my own life. I proved to you that death is not real. I proved to you that the body is not real. I proved to you that my love for you is unchangeable. I've proven to you there's nothing between you and me. I've proven to you there's nothing to fear. I have proven to you in my own experience. I've showed you as much as I could by even coming, reappearing after the death of the body to show you that death is not real. I've proven to you that nothing can separate you from me, that nothing can separate you from the love that I have for you. Gone anywhere. I'm just having some problems with my internet connection, so bear with me. All right, let's keep this ball rolling. So salvation is a promise made by God that you would find your way to him at last. This promise cannot be but kept. Why? Because it's a promise made by the only source there is. It says it cannot be but kept. In Hebrews, it says that God promised. And God made an oath with himself. And when he could find no one greater to make the oath by or promise with, he swore by himself. He swore by his own reality that blessings, that we are blessed. It says it cannot be but kept. It guarantees that time will have an end. It guarantees that what the dream will eventually run its course. It guarantees that time and form is only temporary and will eventually pass away. It says, and all the thoughts that have been born in time will end as well. All of our experiences, all of the content of our experiences, all of the events, all the activities of time and space and form will eventually return to the nothing that it is. And so to have our confidence or our credence within those things is to have our confidence and credence and so it says not only the activities and events, but all the thoughts that were dreamed up during what time and space. It says God's word is given every mind which thinks that it has separate thoughts and will replace these thoughts of conflict with the thoughts of peace or thoughts of God. We are in the process. All of us are in the process of being revealed as to who we really are. And in the process of revelation or being revealed, what's being revealed is what's already there. What is being revealed to us in these workbook lessons is the mere fact that we are already and have always and will always be what God is. God is our only reality. God is our only truth. What is being revealed is that we are unchangeable beings, the one self that God is. That's what we share. That is what's being revealed to us. And so all activity, all experiences that we've had that would show us differently. In the midst of all of that, what was always present is what was always true. That we are one with God, that we are a part of the one self that God is. We share what God is. We're not something that's separate from God. Even though we've had these fantasies, these dreams, the hallucinations, these ideas, these imaginings, the fantasies of being a separate entity. As much as it seemed real to us, as much as our body identification seemed real, as much as our relationships seem real, as much as this world seems real, as much as the history tells us that separation is real, that we really did it, that we really succeeded in separating from God, as much as these things tell us, as tangible as they may seem, what we're learning, what we're coming to understand, what we were coming to accept is the reality of what was always and he created you as himself. This is what this exercise is all about. And so God promises salvation. He promised this. He says, the thought of peace was given to all of us the instant that our mind had thought of war. There was no need for such a thought before, for peace was given without opposites. It merely was. Before this tiny mad idea of separation came, there was no need for a thought of peace, because peace is all there is. There was no need for forgiveness, no need for salvation. There was no need for remembrance. There was no need for miracles. Why? Because there was only perfect oneness. And there is only perfect oneness. These things only came about because of a dream of separation, because of a tiny man idea that created all of this as an attack on reality. And we're watching. Notice that green has not changed. We get caught up in the content of what's being shown on the screen. But notice the screen hasn't changed. The screen hasn't gotten angry. The screen is not fearful. The screen is not resisting what's playing on this foreground. The screen merely is, because what the screen understands that there is nothing. What? There is nothing. There's absolutely nothing permanent about the content of activities. There's nothing permanent about the movie that is showing up on the screen. The only thing that is permanent is the screen. And so likewise, when we wake up to this reality, to know that we are the permanence, we are the substance, we are the evidence, we are the source of all life, we're the source of all the activities of life, we are the unchanging power, we're the unchanging background, we're the unchanging reality of all things. We are the identity. We don't lose our reality, our truth about who we are by the coloring of activities. We don't qualify ourselves based on what's happening or not happening. We understand that we are the unchangeable beings that God created. But when the mind appears to be split, there is a need of healing. When we think of ourselves as these seeming something else, that seeming something else is what needs to be healed. It says, so the thought that has the power to heal, the split, became a part of every fragment of the mind that still was one. And our mind is still one. It says, but failed to recognize its oneness. It says, now it does not know itself and thought its own identity was lost. And so we created our own selves and call ourselves these body identification. And we give a social security number and a name and a birthplace, and we have parents, and we have a timeline from birth to death and everything that happens in between. We call our history or our story. That's what needs to be saved. It says salvation is undoing in the sense that it does nothing, failing to support the world of dreams and malice. Thus, it let illusions go by not supporting them and merely lets them quietly go down to dust. And what they hide is now revealed. What the life that we made and call it ourself, what that hid is now revealed when we let it go. And what it revealed is our unchanging self, our unaltered self, the self that God created. This self that is eternal, this self that is reality, this self that is the truth, this self that is love, this self that doesn't come and go, this self that is the only self that God made, this self that has no birth or no death. It merely is. That's what is revealed. That is what is revealed. So this revealed awareness, or this revelation knowledge that we are engrossed in, that's bringing about the reality or an awakening or a transformation. It's bringing about a enlightened experience that we are involved here in, revealing what was always there. This is what we're doing in these workbook lessons. And so in this review lesson today, 99 and 100, it's all about understanding what salvation is all about. And it's in God's salvation plan. From God's point of view, that's all salvation is. It is God's plan. It's God's promise that we all will be revealed. It all will be revealed to us who we are. And so salvation becomes our only function, even for being here. Even for being aware or even for being conscious that there our being here is to become the substance and the evidence that nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. You remain as God created you. And so in Workbook Lesson 99, it says salvation is my only function. It's your only function. We read earlier that, or we learned earlier that happiness is our function. Forgiveness is our function. Well, happiness and forgiveness and salvation are all the same. Why? Because it all reveals your reality of being this innocent, whole, and complete self-same one self with God. And that bring on joy and peace. Why? Because what? There is nothing but that reality, which is joy and peace. And all of the things that we have experienced in time and space, we realize that they are but illusions. They are but experiences. You are the holy home of God. You are the shining brightness of love. You are the joy. You are the peace. You are the happiness. And so we don't look for it. We don't seek for it in dreams and in illusions and in places and in relationships. You are the thing. You are everything. There's nothing missing in you, and there is nothing broken in you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's no judgment. There's nothing to judge because you are the perfect one. That is who you are. That is what you are. And salvation is why you are here in this moment, learning about your purpose, learning how to renew your mind, how to find into truth. So it's our function here is to give. Our function here is to forgive the world for all the errors that I have made by my misperceptions based on separation. Forgive the world. And we say that the world is only a false representation. The world is only a false idea of who we are. So we forgive our false identity for all the errors that we have made based on a lie, based on a belief in separation. So we forgive all that. In other words, we give all that up for the truth. We give all that up for the reality. We give it all up for the promise. We give it all up for the guarantee of God. We give it all up for our own reality. We bring all the illusions to the truth because illusions only existed because what we projected them. We had a belief in separation. We created this whole illusion world. Salvation is not doing anything. Salvation, like it says here, is the undoing. Like he said here, it says salvation is undoing in the sense that it does nothing. Failing to support the world of dreams and malice. So we withdraw our endorsement in the world of dreams, in the world of separation. We no longer give any credence to that. We realize it was a false identity that we created. God had nothing to do with it. God had absolutely nothing to do with what we thought, what we created, what we made, because God is only perfect. God only knows perfection. God only knows oneness. God knows nothing of separation and division. It would only be those who fall into a trance or to a dream, dreaming of this. That's the experience that we have. And so now that we discovered that that is all a false, a false self-made unreality that we created, we undo it, walk away from it. It's not true. So it says, my function, my purpose, our purpose here in this moment is to forgive the world for all the errors that we have made. For thus am I released from them. From what? From all the errors. We're released from our own errors, right? Errors can be corrected. Remember, the Course doesn't promote the idea of sin. That's a man-made idea. The Course says we make errors, we make mistakes. And errors and mistakes can and will be corrected. And when they are corrected, it says, for thus am I released from the errors and the mistakes with all the world. So even the world of dreams is set free. We bring that to the truth, and it's all dissolved into the truth. Nothing has happened. We remain as God created us. We remain where God created us. We remain in the very heart, in the very center of this one being, this one self we call God. Awareness has not been tainted by any of the activities. Consciousness has not been invaded by any of these dreaming, illusionary imaginings of separation. It remains just as pure, just as whole, and just as complete. And so do you, and so do I, and so do all humanity. So the suffering will end as we wake up from the dream, walk away from the walk away from the nothingness. And so that's a review of Workbook Lesson 99. Salvation is our only function. So you remind yourself throughout the day that and then Workbook Lesson 100 says, my part or my role is essential to God's plan for salvation. Now, God has a plan. And we just talked about God's plan. And God's plan is what? His promise. God's plan is his promise, his guarantee that all of us will wake up from the belief in separation. That's God's plan. It has nothing to do with evangelizing. It has nothing to do with a gospel of fear-based theology. It has nothing to do with hell or heaven. God's plan for salvation merely has to do with the reality of who we are. If you remember, if I go back and read just a little of Workbook Lesson 100, it says, my part is essential to God's plan for salvation. The Son completes his Father, so your part in it completes your Father's plan. Salvation must reverse the mad belief in separation. See? Salvation, God's promise, must reverse the mad belief in separate thoughts and separate bodies, which lead separate lives and go their separate ways. This must be reversed. It says one function shared by separate minds unites them in one purpose. For each one of them is equally essential to them all. God wills for us is perfect happiness. It says this part is essential to God's plan as to our happiness. It says we are indeed essential to God's plan. Our joy is absolutely essential. Without our joy, without your awareness, without your complete inclusion into God's reality, God is incomplete without any of us. I know this is a little different, but it'll bring happiness and joy and peace into your awareness forever. So we are indeed essential to God's plan. We are God's messengers. And God's messengers are joyous, and their joy heals sorrow and despair. God's messengers are the proof that God wills perfect happiness for all. Notice now, for all. All who will accept their Father's gift is theirs. When we are sad, it is a sign that we would play another part instead of that which was assigned to us by God. Today is the day that we understand joy is our function here. We bring God's happiness and seize his message. We bring, or God's peace to everyone. We bring God's peace to everyone who looks upon us and sees his message in our face. So our part in God's plan is essential, and that is what? Our joy, our peace, our happiness. Salvation and happiness and forgiveness are all one. So when we show up in the world as the happy home, the happy person, and I'm not talking about a fake, a made-up happiness. I'm talking about a happiness from knowing the truth. I'm talking about a joy from knowing the truth, knowing what the promise is, knowing that it is what? It is what? It is unchangeable and unalterable. Understanding that our role is essential to God's plan. It brings about an expression of joy and happiness and peace that becomes the light of the world. And it is in this light that others are able to see or are pointed to their own happiness, to their own joy and their own peace. And so I am, or you are, or we are essential for the world. So that we not who we are in truth, but who we have made as false images. That's what needs saving. And salvation meaning that it needs what? It needs to be dissolved within what? Within the light of who we are. It says, for God gave us his plan that we might save the world. Not the world like the physical world. That's not what needs to be saved. What needs to be saved? Or what needs to be done away with? What needs to be undone is this false self that we created. We call it the separate self, the ego self. It needs to be what? Needs to be brought to the truth so that it can be healed. So that it knows that the truth is not what? Separate. Knows that what reality is not broken off into pieces, but there's only the one. It's just that simple. Our part in that, a role in that, to be like the world. That wherever we go, whatever we're doing, that our light shine brightly so others can have a portal to wake up to the reality. So these two lessons on salvation is important for us to understand. These two ideas in this process that we're going through is important to understand what true salvation is. That there are many plans. Proverbs say that many other plans in the man's heart, but it's only God's purposes that shall prevail. And God's plan for salvation is what it is. It is the revealing. It is the revelation of the truth. It is the guarantee. It is God's promise. God promised this. God promised us everything, and all things are ours. There's nothing outside of us. All things are ours. All things are given to us richly to enjoy. And I'm not talking so much about the things of this world, but we are the source of everything. Everything is ours. We are the source of God desires and God purpose for us to what? Create like unto himself, like he created us like unto himself. That which is what? That which reflects the nature of God, which would be happiness and love and joy and peace. No lack, no sorrow, no pain, no suffering, no sickness, no disease. Not a life that ends or a life that begins, but an endless life. We are part and parcel of an endless life, of an endless self, of an eternal, changeless being. That is what and who and why we are. And I am so glad about that. And I hope you're glad about that. And so I'm going to stop right now because I can only get a little more happy, a little more joyous, and a little more peaceful by talking. But I think you got the idea on these two lessons. Salvation belongs to you as a function that you are releasing the world. It's about releasing the world or releasing the false idea of separation and coming into a revelation or an awareness, coming into a consciousness of reality only. Thank you so much for being here this day. And so as you go through your day, just remind yourself. Just remind yourself about this plan of salvation. Remind yourself of the importance, essential, absolute, necessary part that you play in God's plan for salvation. You are the Savior of this world. You are the substance of things hoped for. You are the evidence of things not seen. Yes, you are. That's all reality. And so go forth in peace, because you are peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to that which is good, that which is true. Render to no man evil. Strengthen those that are faint in heart and support those that are weak. Help the afflicted and honor all men. Love and serve this reality. Rejoice in the power that you are what? The Savior, the light of the world. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you on tomorrow with Workbook Lesson 116. Bye-bye. Have a great day.